on being about a 45-minute session here. I'd like to thank our sponsors of the Lunch and Learn session today, RingCentral and QoS Networks. I'm Dave Dyson, founder and chief strategist at Eclipse Communications here in Chicago, Illinois. And I believe that communication is the most important thing that human beings do. I also believe it's the most important thing your business does. How you communicate with your coworkers, your peers, one another, your vendors, your partners, and most importantly, your customers defines your business and can even make or break it. Today, I'm joined by Dan Amen, Vice President of IT at Tuthill Corporation. Dan's a forward-looking business leader who's willing to disrupt the status quo at his company when he sees compelling business benefit for Tuthill. Dan, welcome, my friend. Why don't you get us started today and tell us a little bit about yourself and Tuthill?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for, boy, I don't know if I want to follow up that introduction. I kind of like that one. But as Dave mentioned, I'm the Vice President of IT here at Tuthill. I've been with the company a little over 20 years, and you know, we've gone through a lot of change in those 20 years. Tuthill is a manufacturing company. We are privately held, almost 130 years old now, on the 5th generation of Tuthill in the business, and we make pumps and meters. Those are our primary lines of business, and we're about a $150 million company right now.
Awesome, Dan. Excited to be with you. Thanks for making the time. Thank you to everybody out there who's joining us over the lunch hour here today. You know, having your sandwich and getting a chance to learn from a peer who I think is just a wonderfully bold thinker. And I'm going to start on that vein, Dan, with this question. Manufacturing firms, particularly over a century-old manufacturing firms, are not necessarily thought of, maybe unfairly, maybe stereotypically, as bold leaders in technology. They're often considered to be laggards. How is it that Tuthill's different? Why are you guys different? Talk a little bit about how you're able to keep Tuthill ahead of the curve and more importantly, ahead of the competition when it comes to technology and how you use it within the company.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think our rap from a manufacturing standpoint is typically we're really conservative and risk averse, and we want that technology to be tried and true before we even think about introducing it into our environments. And yet here at Tuthill, you know, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is we pattern ourselves after lean manufacturing. So that spirit of continuous improvement is prevalent throughout everything, and one of the things that I've really pushed us to do is incorporate that and adopt that into the IT side. So we're always looking for a better way to do things. And, you know, one of the benefits I think we have is we aren't a huge 500 facility type of a company. We're smaller in nature. So I think we're a little bit more nimble. We can typically try out and pilot new things in a little bit quicker potentially than other companies. Part of the downside of that, though, is we're a smaller company, so we don't have a really big IT staff, and so I personally rely a lot on really knowledgeable partners that are out there in the space that help us out, like Eclipse, that really have done a lot with us.
Awesome. You know, in that vein, I think the bigger picture topic here, to some degree today, is SDWAN and UCaaS, and those are exciting terms in the IT industry. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's doing it. And you get to be a little bit of an IT hipster here. Like, I did it way before it was cool. We're well over a half a decade plus into you guys being an SD-WAN shop. And for context, and I'm gonna toot Dan's horn a little bit. This is one of the first VeloCloud VMware customers in the country that you're seeing on the screen here. They were really bold in that decision making, seeing the potential of what SD-WAN could be. You know, they're with RingCentral today, but they did a hosted voice sort of semi-cloud solution well before they were with RingCentral. So how are you selling new tools, ideas, and platforms internally? You know, again, most manufacturing firms don't like to live too close to the bleeding edge. How are you convincing the company that these initiatives are right?
You know, for me, you know, the first step was to look at our business strategy as a company and try to, as best we can, let's link and develop our IT strategy to support that. We were a company that we talked about a lot of acquisitions over the past decade and really changing the makeup of the company. We started out when I started with the company back in 2000, we had 35 locations, and we've been consolidating. We've divested a couple of companies, and one of the things that really hit me with that is these contracts that we're always saddled with. Back in the old T1 days and MPLS days and everything like that, we felt very much like it was monumental every time we wanted to make a change. Every time we wanted to add a location, it was 90 days of lead time. And so hearing where the business was going, my team and we put together an IT strategy, and we wanted to talk about being more nimble, more agile, being able to adjust a little bit quicker. And I'd love to take credit for here's why we went to SDWAN, but to be transparent, we had the idea at a 30,000 foot level that we want to be more agile and more nimble and be able to add locations quicker and scale up quicker as the business changed. And we kind of went to you guys. We went to Eclipse and said, here's our thought. How do we get there? And one of the things I really love about the Eclipse team is they are truly thought leaders in a sense that we can come with an abstract thought like that. And before I knew it, I was meeting with Dave and Kirk and Nikki, and they were just throwing out ideas. And they talked about SD-WAN, and my network guy's eyes lit up because he'd read about it. Quite frankly, I was I'd say a little familiar, and maybe that's being generous. But you guys did a really nice job of showing us what was possible there and what we could do there. Similarly, on the phone system side, it was really painful whenever we wanted to spin up a new location with a phone system. There's hardware, all the hardware to buy, the back end hardware to buy, and we were looking for something similar there. And you started talking to us about kind of the UCaaS types of solutions, cloud-based, and it just made sense for where we were going.
That's awesome, and thank you for the kind words. And my team is grateful. We love the partnership. And for context, for the folks on the call here, Eclipse and Tuthill have worked together for the better part of a decade now. In our role when we're doing our jobs, well, we're bringing new ideas. We're taking those abstract problems and tying it to technology that either exists or is nascent, coming on the scene. And it's always a great partnership when somebody like Dan and his team can look at us and say, we're going to bounce ideas off these guys. Talk about a little more about the value of having a partner like Eclipse, both from that strategy and ideas side, but then also you mentioned having a lean staff like many folks do today. IT staffs are about half the size they were 15 years ago on average in a big company. So talk about the value of having a team who's been there, done it, can help with things like implementation and day two support and training and user adoption. How important is that to you and your team when you may not have that expertise in-house?
It's hugely important because you're absolutely right. We're a third of the size that we used to be from an IT standpoint. And so where I've got some really talented individuals that are eager to learn and eager to take on new technologies, we don't have the depth of knowledge, and that's always been a struggle for us. And so having a partner like Eclipse, you guys are kind of like that booster shot on steroids of knowledge there, and you can help talk us through what that looks like, how it works. You put us in touch with the partners that will really help us to understand it at a more deeper level. And so I've got a team that's really hungry and thirsty for knowledge, and I feel like every time I go to a partner like you, Dave, it allows me to feed them and to help them grow and develop. And then there's the matter of the kind of the extra sets of arms and legs to help us put things into place with all the different locations.
Yeah, it's sort of an old IT parable of the CIO and the COO or CEO's office saying, we need more money and investment in education and training for our people. And the CEO says something to the effect of, what happens if we make all this investment in training them and they leave? And the CIO always answers back, what happens if we don't and they stay? So
exactly,
having a resource because most teams are keeping the place running and their head is down and they want to learn, but they need to do it in a way that works for them and suits them. And it's something we think a lot about here at the company of when we bring new ideas to guys on your team, Jeff and Paul and others, to say, we see this thing that we think might be of interest to you. How would you like to consume it? So educating any IT professional should be willing to learn new things. It's a fast changing space. I don't think it's changed quite as fast in the last couple of years as any point ever in history. So, when you're thinking about that pace of change for everybody listening, your guys can't possibly read enough in their spare time to keep up with what's happening right now. It's lightning fast. Having experts from the outside is a valuable resource, whether they're Eclipses or others. Getting people who have expertise is valuable. I want to pivot to something I think fascinating, because I talk about a lot. The hardest thing to move in a big company is the status quo. It's always easy to say, well, it's working, let's keep it going. You guys had, I thought, a really good MPLS provider, a good relationship, somebody you were pretty happy with, a company called Masergy. This is now 5-6 years ago. It would have been really easy to, negotiate the contract down, get them a little cheaper, get them to stay. They were doing a good enough job. But we had seen this SDWAN opportunity. We had seen that it was going to provide some business value. And you made a conscientious choice to do what was hard and make change versus kicking the can down the road. And the same thing goes for your hosted hybrid voice, where you moved it from Smoothstone West IP to what was now proving to be and appearing to be the best in class RingCentral. Those are almost harder decisions than making the original transformation, because you have something new and relatively shiny, and you're still making the choice to change. And I think Tuthill has one of the neatest methodologies for reviewing the things you have and making sure they're still the right things you need. Can you talk about that process? Because making a change from, for instance, one UCaaS provider to another may not seem intuitive to many people on the call, but it makes perfect sense when you look at the Tuthill methodology.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, for us, it really ties back to that lean, the lean manufacturing spirit of continuous improvement. One of the things that I've implemented here is we look at every solution that we have on kind of a 2 to 3 year cycle, and it conveniently typically coincides with some of our contract renewals. But we look at our major systems, and we say every 2 to 3 years we want to do a review, and in the spirit of where's it serving us well, where do we see gaps, what's changed since the time we signed that contract, what's new in the company, what's new in the arena, and what really do we see in the next 3 years? Is the solution still going to serve us in the next 3 years, or is there something that'll serve us better? And you mentioned both the Masergy and the RingCentral piece, and the West IP pieces. They were solutions that were working for us well, but we'd made a decision back in 2013. I'd gotten executive buy-in on we're gonna be a cloud first company. We're gonna look wherever we can to put applications in the cloud, and the Masergy one in particular versus the SD-WAN piece with QoS and VeloCloud. The Masergy piece was going to be a limit for us from a bandwidth side, and we know spinning up and increasing bandwidth on the old MPLS side and on the T1 circuit side was always a lengthy process. And so when we started looking at the SD-WAN piece, we realized that's really a scalable solution for us. It's got the redundancy we're looking for. It's got the bandwidth opportunities we're looking for, the load balancing. You can handle mission critical operations. And as we started shifting more towards that cloud first mentality, it's really served us well. The RingCentral one is similar. From our standpoint, the West IP system was working for us, and yet it really felt clunky in some ways. It wasn't anywhere near as nimble for our road warriors, and so they were coming out with an app on the desktop, and it just didn't work very well. So when we started looking at an alternative like RingCentral, it was night and day. Whether it was that telephony either on the traditional hard phone, soft phone, mobile app, everything just really felt like it worked together nicely, and it fit where we were going. The conferencing side became just that natural extension for us, and it was one of those where we sat there and said, how did we stay on the old one so long once we got onto RingCentral?
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, for everybody in the audience today, um, and Tuthill is in a minority of companies we work with that do this. And I think I'd like to see everybody adopting it. They actually, if they want to renew and stay with a solution, they still have to justify it. And in this process of justifying the renewal, I think forces you in some degree to say, well, is there anything better out there? Is there, has the leader changed? Has the technology changed? And I would encourage anybody to, talk to Dan about this idea, because a lot of firms just say, we have the current thing that 3 years is up. Let's just renew it. You guys say it's time to renew. Let's force ourselves to take a good hard look and see if it's the exact right thing to do, or if there is something better. Again, in a very lean manufacturing sense, but it's also a really progressive way to look at technology, because the space does change. Like I love the fact that you're not allowed to just sign the next renewal without proving it and justifying it within the business.
Yeah, and there's definitely, I'd love to say we do that on every single contract that we have. There are some that we do kick the can down the road every now and then, but those are definitely the lower impact, not as much business value. For something like our network, something like our unified communications, we know that every person in the company is going to be dependent and touch that. And especially given our mobile sales force, we really wanted something there that allows them to move forward. And I'm not gonna lie, we've made some not so good solutions or decisions too. We were back in 2013, we went from on-premise Microsoft email to Gmail, and we thought that was, it was enterprise ready at that point, and boy, it wasn't. So in 2016, we went back to Microsoft, but we went to 365, so it's now on the cloud. So I like to phrase it as, going to Gmail helped us, ease the transition. But the reality is we did it. We looked at it. We evaluated it after a couple of years and said, this isn't serving us long term. So yeah, we're definitely, we always want to look at it. We always want to justify it every time we go through the renewal cycle.
Appreciate that self-reflection, and to jump to your defense, Google was telling everybody it was enterprise ready around about then. So I think more than a few people were under the impression that it might be. So I want to talk a little bit again about our long-term working partnership, and again how we try to be out ahead of the curve, finding interesting new things. SD-WAN's a big topic, and there's lots of ways to do it, and there's lots of new companies that came on the scene, and they've all been acquired by big companies at this point. Nobody still quite really knows how to do it. And in this case, you guys were really early to the VeloCloud platform, but then a little down the line, you found a partner who is sort of a master worker of getting VeloCloud to work as effectively and as well as possible and manage it on your behalf. So I want to ask you again about the value of an Eclipse, finding a QoS Networks who maybe isn't a household name or a name brand, doesn't maybe have that marketing glow of like a RingCentral, who I think most people at this point have heard of because of their strength in marketing and sales. But QoS is a cool little company that made their bones just managing VeloCloud SD-WAN networks better than everybody else. And what's the value of having somebody who can go out and find that for you versus maybe looking for that needle in the haystack on your own?
I can't overstate that value. Again, being the size company we are, we don't have a Gartner membership, so we that's too pricey for us. So we really rely on what I consider to be kind of those industry insiders and veterans that really know how things work. Quite frankly, your team, Dave, does a lot of that legwork and that research for us. We come to you with an idea, we come to you with a thought, or we come to you with a frustration, which is exactly what we had with the early days on the SD-WAN. We were working with a provider that we thought was a very cooperative partnership with VeloCloud, and turns out it seemed a little more antagonistic near the end. And we said, hey, we're really getting frustrated because as we want to change things, we're getting delays here. And you guys, you came up with a couple different solutions there and said, here are a couple of partners here, and ultimately QoS really bubbled to the top because of their ability, I think, to respond quickly, to know exactly where we wanted to go and be able to provide us with kind of that roadmap of here's what we can upgrade, here's what we can change, and here, as you guys start adding new locations, here's how that'll work. So having Eclipse there to help us just identify who some alternatives might be, I think probably took a good 30 to 60 days out of the process for us, because we didn't have to go out and research ourselves. And you also had, I know that anybody that you bring to the table for us is already vetted. It's not somebody that maybe we saw in a Google search or saw somewhere that we really don't know the story behind them.
Yeah, you mentioned Gartner, and we like Gartner a lot, but it has its limitations. And as I sometimes like to remind people, Gartner doesn't implement a lot of stuff, and we do. And so there's your position in the Magic Quadrant, and then there's who's executing today, which is always the real science. As we like to say, getting it off the whiteboard and into reality is the hard part. And so yeah, we think there's a lot of value in sometimes looking beyond the Magic Quadrant and some of the other big coverages that exist out there. I want to pivot here. You talked about a really important topic, especially right now. Because
so to Dave, before you pivot though, one thing that you mentioned there, I wanted to kind of underscore too is you're right. So some of those research firms do a nice job of recommending, and then that's kind of where it ends. One of the things that I don't think I've mentioned yet is the fact that you guys are there side by side with us, and we're now 2 years into our partnership with QoS, and as we continue to talk about changes and things like that, I think we come to you guys as much as we come to QoS, because we know that in talking to you, it's like we're talking to QoS. It's like we're talking to RingCentral. We really rely on your instinct, and I feel like your team is there with us every step of the way in the trenches. So sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No. Anytime you want to interrupt me to compliment my team is acceptable, Dan. I like it. You mentioned merger, acquisition, and divestiture, which is a big topic right now. There's a lot of it going on. We think it's going to heat up here over the next little bit. You talked about your stake in the ground, quite a while ago at this point, to say we're going to be cloud first. And vis-a-vis the technologies we're sort of focused on today, SD-WAN and UCaaS, how has that helped in both recent acquisition activity and recent divestiture activity? Like, how quickly can you get things on and off your fabric with these two technologies?
Yeah, so I can talk first, I guess, about the divestiture side, and for me, it's what's really nice about these types of solutions is they're pretty modular, in the sense that while they're all one solution, it's pretty easy to take one section and carve that off, because I don't have the back end hardware, kind of the boat anchor there that's weighing me down that needs to talk to the rest of it. And in RingCentral in particular, when we sold a company down in Florida, and we had 25 lines down there, and we spent more time, I think, waiting on the acquiring company to kind of get their parts rolled up and ready to go. RingCentral was pretty seamless from our side. It was here are the numbers we're going to port over, and as we port those over, we're going to cancel these lines, and it became almost an administrative invoicing type of an exercise versus moving all this hardware, changing all this hardware. What are you going to do with the back end PBX and all of that? And it's just really it simplified it greatly, and we're going through another one right now, and we're seeing the same thing. And while Dave, again, your team has been very involved, they probably wouldn't want to hear that I think it's easy. It's been extremely straightforward to go down that path. On the acquisition side, as we spin up, we spun up a new location last year and outside the Kansas City area. The effort to add, it basically came down to the lead time for the internet circuits, and those are really more of a commodity these days than anything else. And the Bello Cloud piece was ready. It was a matter of just turning that on. The RingCentral piece, it was ordering the phones and connecting them up. And we're going as a wireless first facility too, so a lot of our phones are even the wireless phones, so it's even easier to move around and reconfigure the shop floor. It became, again, it was like ordering a pizza for me. It was, hey, we're going to order 10 phones and we need, 50 lines. And it was nothing like what we've experienced in the past, where it was the big bulky, we need to wait for the back end infrastructure to show up and we need to wait for this. It was, we'll wait for the internet lines and that's it.
Yeah, well, all well said, Dan. And I'm going to say it more succinctly and a little bit more boldly, even. If your company is a serial acquirer, merger, or divester of assets, and you're not on SDWAN and cloud UCaaS, you're making a mistake. Speed to make change, both ingesting new companies and divesting companies or locations you're getting rid of, I would say gets cut in half or better. And frankly, like to your point, if you acquire something that already has internet circuits, you're literally shipping a VeloCloud box in this case, and they're on your network within days, not months. And you're now starting to pull them into the fabric of what it is you do and how you do it. So yeah, I'm going to be pretty bold on all of that. It's a sort of an adjunct question to this cloudification of everything. We've got a lot of different clients we work with at Eclipse. Some are further along on their journey to the cloud, like yourself. Others were lagging behind for various reasons of why they didn't make those changes that we all sort of know were coming. About a year ago, something happened that caused a little bit of a minor disruption for a few of us. We had to suddenly send everybody all around the world home all at once. And for the Tuthills of the world, it was a decision of, hey, everybody stay home and continue to do your work as you've done it. And the thing I like to talk about is like your customer service agents taking customer calls at home the way they would have in the office the day before. We had other clients who had to go through super heroic efforts of weeks on end, 24 hours a day to get VPN licenses and all this other stuff to get their people semi-functional at home. Having not forecast the pandemic, none of us did. How grateful were you in March of 2020 that you had moved to all these cloud methodologies? How easy did it make it to send everybody home, and how easy was it to keep serving your customers, more importantly?
Oh, I think being with the solutions we had saved us, because you're right. When that happened, to say it escalated quickly is, I don't even think comes close to capturing the speed at which things changed for us. We literally had one location that went home on a Friday, and by Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning, we were sending them home. And with the RingCentral solution in particular, the biggest decision they had was, do I want to use the soft phone on my desktop? Do I want to use my cell phone? Or do I want to bring home the desk phone? Because I know I can bring it home and plug it in at home if I've got a switch at home or something like that. And the biggest question is, do I need a power brick to power it? But the fact that it truly is that plug and play type of an environment, and they were able to, again, our customer service team, they chose typically to take the phone home because they had a headset associated with it and they knew they were going to deal with it all day and really wanted that familiarity. And so it was, the biggest decision was, which version of RingCentral do I want to bring home? Because I can bring any one of them.
Yeah. And as I keep gently reminding all of the IT leaders, I'm so fortunate to work with like yourself, who maybe haven't still crossed the bridge into the cloud. You get to use a global pandemic as an excuse one time, and now you have to figure out work hybridity of people working in different locations, people working from home more often than they were before. And we're all having that conversation around hybridity now. What does work look like in the future? And frankly, I don't see any version of how we're all going to be working, Dan, where the cloud methodologies and tools aren't the ones we need, so people can have that flexibility. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in the office, Thursday, Friday at home, and then next week they're at another location, and they're all just functional and everything just works. Does that jibe with what you're seeing in the walls at Tuthill?
Absolutely. And we like to pride ourselves and say that, as a manufacturer, we consider ourselves an essential business, and we wanted to get back to work as quickly as we could. But we're still seeing, these days that we've got we're doing kind of the AB team or the red blue team, where we've got half the staff in some locations is in the office, half is at home, and again, that transition between I'm going to be in the office this week, at home next week, isn't really much of a transition for them anymore. They just know they need to remember to bring their laptop home, and anything they need to do, they can do from their laptop because it's in the cloud. And for the majority, I'd say probably 90% of our applications, they don't even need a VPN connection. So it's become definitely the norm and not the exception. And I think we're really well prepared given the way that we're set up, and the fact that we do have as much in the cloud, and we do have as portable a solution as we have in a lot of our areas.
Awesome. We're gonna jump into a little bit of Q&A here. I want to remind everybody that the Q&A window is open down below, and I'm gonna sort of take a first question here. How do you determine what IT roles are in-house and staffed by Tuthill, and which roles you look to partners like Eclipse for?
For me, the in-house piece is really what I'd like to see is kind of that crucial differentiators. If it's something that we're going to heavily customize, something that we're really going to try to go off in a different direction because of the way we do our manufacturing or the way that we want to operate our business systems, those are pieces that I typically want to have in-house. And if it's more of the what I would consider to be, I don't want to call them commodities, but to me, they're more of the back office. They don't show a lot of financial impact, or not financial impact, but business impact immediately. That's where I'd like to augment outside and really have somebody more of a trusted partner that I know has the depth of knowledge there and maybe has a deeper team than what we have.
Sure. Yeah, I always draw it on the board here or envision it, Dan, as a series of concentric circles. That inner circle is like, this is how we make our money. This is the stuff we need to do to thrive and survive as a company. You staff to that. That next ring is the trusted partner ring of, who can augment or help us solve some functional things that we don't necessarily have an FTE available for. And then your third ring is the service elements of things that can just be commoditized, thrown out there. That's the way I envision it. And I think it's a healthy way to look at it given the constraints on most IT staffs in terms of FTE today.
Yeah, and we spend most of our attention on those first and second rings. That third ring is we'll call them when we need them, and we'll submit the tickets when we need it. But it's probably more of that transactional relationship than it is the partnership. And we had a new infrastructure manager start here 2 years ago, and one of the things that hit me after about 3 months is he was doing a lot of things on his own, a lot of research on his own. And after about the 5th time I asked him, did you talk to Eclipse about that? And I don't think he'd ever worked with a partner like you that again, I rely on, if I don't talk to you guys and shoot you guys an email daily or weekly, it's probably a rare week. And so just knowing that's a little different mindset, I think, for some people to really lean into a partner that you trust, I think is really important these days.
Awesome. I've got a couple more questions filtering through, and I'm gonna get to. I'm paraphrasing a little bit because it's a question about financial impact versus technical decision making. I'm gonna ask it in a very Dave way. How the hell do you get anybody to pay for any of this stuff, Dan?
Yeah. So for me, we've been pretty fortunate in a lot of ways. The beauty is knowing where we wanted to go as the company. We started to project, this was what it would cost if we stayed with the old technology. We'd be looking at a hardware refresh at a certain day. We'd be looking at, a more robust infrastructure or network. So that's going to cost us this much. And we started to project some of those costs of, here's what it's going to cost to stay with the old, with kind of our current way of doing things. And some of the benefit of the newer approach like SDWAN in particular is because it's so scalable and because it's so customizable at a location level, we don't need that one size fits all. And what we actually found when we went to the SDWAN solution was just a significant savings. So from a financial side, even though there's an upfront investment, the 3-year or the 5-year savings on that made it a pretty straightforward way to justify it. It actually allowed us to build in a little bit of a kind of an adjunct switch refresh that we were able to fund based on going to that solution.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I think at the risk of a small Eclipse commercial, working together to understand how you and your company think about finance, return on investment, total cost of ownership, cost of change, building that factor in that story, because ultimately all of us have a budgetary constraint. If anybody on the call has the magic checkbook of unlimited money to build the coolest stuff imaginable, please call me immediately. But yeah, figuring out not only how to pay for it, but where the returns are going to come, and where the gains, whether they be productivity or savings or what have you, that's all part of this. Like, that's part of the story we have to tell the business collectively, IT and folks like ourselves.
Yeah, and not everyone, we're not that fortunate with every solution where we're going to say, hey, we're going to save money here. And sometimes we know it may be the same or even a little bit additional. And in those cases, what I found to be successful is, if I've already painted the overall picture of where we're going as a company and how IT is going to align with that. It's more of a reminder of, remember, we talked about doing this. We talked about moving cloud first. So that means we are going to invest in an AWS now, because we're going to start to build up, more of an infrastructure in there versus a data center. And it may look like a higher run rate, and yet we're not going to have that technology refresh every 3 years that we've been going through. And so sometimes it's also just that reminder of, we've talked about this, and we're staying true to our strategy by doing this.
Yeah, we had a plan, and we're going to continue to drive towards it. Really happy about this question, because it was on my mind. As I always say, every CIO has a top 10 priority list. 1 through 9 is securing the network and everything on it. Number 10 is whatever the other thing is. So great question here about, the SD-WAN benefits are known: flexibility, different connectivities, being able to use the internet, broadband. But how do you tie this to your overall network security, your firewalls, your intrusion protection, your filtering? I'll sort of start with this thought that at Eclipse, we don't talk about networks without talking about security. Those two things are married in a profound way. They always kind of have been, but more so now. And we can touch a little bit more on what that means. But how do you think about security with any of this stuff? If you're bringing a cloud solution from a RingCentral, if you're moving to SD-WAN, like, where does security fit in the conversation?
Yeah, security is front and center. I mean, I like your analogy of the top 10 things are about how do we secure this, and so that becomes one of the first boxes we need to check, is if we're looking at a different solution or a different way of doing things, does it increase the risk, and does it increase our exposure? Is this another way in for some attacker, and if so, what are our steps for mitigating it? We still have on-premise firewalls, and we still rely on on-premise firewalls, and check back in 6 months to a year, because that's one of the things, Dave, I know we're talking with your group about, is do we still want those, or do we want to move to a different solution there, more of a cloud-based piece? But security to me needs to be one of those top 3 things you talk about. Feature sets are great, and it's wonderful, and yet one of the things we get paid for is to make sure that for the bright shiny object over here in the corner, that it doesn't disrupt our network and doesn't put our network at risk. So it's sometimes is that customer referral and testimonial. Let's talk about how did you address the change, and how did we make sure that we handled that. It's also from our side, it's understanding what do we want to keep within our 4 walls still, and what do we want to release out to the cloud. So in terms of securing it, it's that trade-off. I always look at it as, at the one end of the spectrum, it's a completely secure solution and system, and at the other end, it's an easy-to-use solution. And where do we want to fall on that spectrum? How far do we want to get to easy to use, realizing that we are accepting a little additional risk as we make some changes. Yeah.
If you want fully secure, go back to typewriters, right? It's
exactly. Yep. In the bunker.
Yeah, what's interesting about that too, and this goes back to some of Dan's earlier comments on having folks like ourselves who are, face out into the industry, if you're here because SD-WAN is something you're thinking about, in a year and a half, we're only going to be talking about SASE networks, SASE, not, SASE like this code, but secure access service edge networks, which are saying, hey, you know what? We actually have to combine SD-WAN functionality, unified threat management, firewall, all that has to live together and work together flawlessly. So we're already heading towards a new era of networking, even though we're in a brand new era of networking, because that's how fast things are moving. And the only thing moving faster than technology is the bad guys right now. So we all have to work to stay ahead of them. Again, not to derail the topic at hand, but SD-WAN is evolving in real time, and security is at the front of it. So we've all got to be security, not necessarily paranoid. I don't like to operate out of that place of paranoia and fear, but the paranoia is well warranted in this day and age, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and you're right. It's always at the top of the list.
Question on, how you're managing your sort of IT strategies. Are you doing an annual approach, a 3-5 year? Is it bits and pieces of all that? Do you have a long-term execution plan, and then 1 year, 6-month chunks that you execute against? How are you personally handling that?
Yeah, we started back when I started in 2000. We were the 5-year strategy plans, and by the time we got to the second year, it was what were we thinking? And yet we stuck with it. And in the 4th year, we'd go with the monumental event-driven. Let's do another 5-year plan. Long about 2013, we decided to go to a 3-year plan. And it became, here's my 3-year plan. 1 was pretty tight. We knew what we were doing. 2 was, we've got about a 70% probability of doing that. And then year 3 was more directional. Here's where we want to go. And it was a little bit of a battle here at Tuthill because we're used to doing the 5-year plans, and yet what I shared and really made sure that our CEO understood is the technology is changing so fast that a 5-year plan is worthless. By the time you get to year 3, if you looked at the 5th year, you'd probably laugh by then. I think we were helped by the smartphone revolution a little bit there, and we were able to really, that became, if I use that example one more time, I probably would have gotten in trouble. But we were able to really push that and say it's a 3-year plan max now, and now that we're in 2021, it's probably closer to a 2-year plan, to be honest. And we're really focused on, within the lean manufacturing piece, we lock in that 1-year goals and plans and initiatives, but the second year becomes more directional now. Here's where we're heading.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's great advice. I'd say it's worth writing a 5-year technology roadmap just to see how wrong you were 5 years from now. But that's just an exercise in humility. Man, some great questions. Yes, Don Cherry knows one of his coats is missing, and no Ken Cargi. It's not velvet. It's reclaimed, recycled shag carpeting from 1976. So thank you for the question on the coat. I wanted to be mindful. We've gotten to the 12:45 mark, and we've done this wonderful lunch and learn. I want to sort of leave with one piece of sage advice from Dan. If I'm sitting here and I'm in this audience and I'm listening to a guy who has been so progressive and advanced and out front, and I'm stuck. My company is still on old systems, things that I know aren't ideal. Where do I start? How do I start? Where's my first step in the journey of 1,000 miles?
Boy, for me, I think that if I could land one thing, it's don't try to do it by yourself. No matter how smart any of us may think we are, this space is evolving so quickly that there are acronyms that are being tossed around today that I would have no clue 30 days ago what they mean. So find that partner that can help you, that can steer you and help guide you, cut down some of the lead time there, talk you off the ledge when things start to really seem overwhelming. And for me, it's start to stack the wins. Again, the days of the 5-year strategy are behind us. What I found to be the most beneficial is, start small, start stacking some wins, and it really starts to build the momentum and starts to build the credibility from an IT standpoint.
Awesome advice. I would sort of double that sentiment with the only wrong step to take right now is inaction. Staying where you are will ultimately, turn into a trouble point or a risk within the company sooner rather than later. So I want to thank you. I can't think of a better way to spend lunchtime on a Friday than catching up with an old friend who has so much to share. And I want to thank you for sharing so openly your experience. Anybody out there, if you want to connect with either Dan or myself, LinkedIn, social network for business nerds is a great place to do it. Dan Amend and Dave Dyson on LinkedIn, please reach out. Happy to chat more for those of you who'd like. And Dan, I can't thank you enough for your wisdom and for sharing and your long-term friendship and partnership with Eclipse. It's been a real treat to be with you today. And thanks so much for being so open with the audience today about your experience at Tuthill.
Oh, it's not my pleasure. I'll tell you, I love working with you guys, and any chance I get to kind of share the fun that we've had and some of the high points, especially with some of the things like RingCentral QoS. I'm always more than happy to talk about that. Thanks, Dave.
Awesome. And thank you everybody for making the time to attend today. Hope you enjoyed your lunch and the conversation between Dan and I. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us for future discussions on either of the topics at hand and more. Thanks again for your time and attention today.
Thanks, everybody.